All right, Acting Chair Larios, we are ready to begin, so you can go ahead and start.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the June 14th, 2021 Zoning Code Update Study Session. This evening, we will be reviewing the Parking Regulations chapter and the Historic Resources chapter. We'll now have a presentation by staff.
Sure, thank you. We'll first start off with the discussion of the Parking Regulations chapter. So this continues our ongoing efforts in reviewing the zoning ordinance update. At the last study session, just as a reminder, the Commission reviewed the draft California mixed use and Broadway mixed use district regulations. The purpose of this study session is to review the draft parking regulations and historic resources chapters. The drafts have been reviewed by planning staff and will be further revised to include input received by the Commission this evening. Like I said, to begin with, we'll start off with parking. So the parking regulations chapter contains parking requirements for all uses within the city, including parking ratios based on the specific type of land use, as shown on table 25.39-1. Those are included in the draft regulations. Many of these ratios are carryovers from the existing code. However, some ratios have been adjusted based on staff's research of other cities' requirements, past experiences in reviewing projects, as well as input received from project applicants. In addition, this chapter includes some new elements currently not found in the zoning code, including regulations for outdoor dining, allowed parking reductions, bicycle parking, off-site parking, tandem parking, valet parking, and mechanical lift parking. So we wanted to include those additional details in the zoning code update because over the past couple of years, we've seen projects with mechanical parking systems, for example, or where they propose valet parking as part of their proposal. So now we wanted to get all of those elements more clearly in. So hopefully you've had a chance to go through some of the parking regulations. I know there's a lot in there. A lot, like I said, are carryovers from our existing code. But we did include some new information in there for your consideration. So I'd be happy to start off with any questions you may have, or we can go ahead and take your comments. Again, we'll focus on parking regulations first, and then we'll go through the historic resources chapter after that.
I see Commissioner Taronis has his hand up.
Thank you. So question regarding the parking lifts and mechanical systems. So am I correct in reading this that we're now expanding this beyond the downtown area and we would conceivably be allowing mechanical systems to be used throughout the city?
Correct. Yeah. So we have a policy currently in the downtown specific plan where we talk about creative parking approaches, but we have seen parking lifts proposed on other projects, for example, in the RRMU district or MBMU district. And, over the last 5 years or so, we've seen more and more of these proposals. And in general, the commission has been pretty accepting of these parking solutions. They take up less footprint, that sort of thing. So we thought we should, be able to expand it throughout the city, not just in certain districts.
So, okay. I agree with that. I think it's good. My question would be then, Ruben, do we need to be clear on what types of systems, or do we just sort of leave it on a case by case basis, or is there a mechanism for review? Because recall that we had the system, the sort of elevator system that was proposed for the project on El Camino Real. And we all had a lot of heartache over that. It was the main crux of why we weren't allowing that or why we didn't approve that project, because of the particulars of that situation in that particular location. We made findings that I think that deemed it inappropriate for that condition. Do we have some mechanism for identifying which type we're talking about, or are we concerned about that at all? Are you guys concerned about that at all?
No, it's a good point. I think we have to be careful with identifying certain manufacturers. We want to try to stay away from that. I think we can leave it up to, well, number one, we can definitely ask for the type of system that they're proposing so they can clarify that. I believe in the new zoning code, we do have certain findings that have to be made, right? Or now we don't really have that. So now we have certain findings. I believe there are 8 findings that have to be made. One of them is that an adequate queuing area be provided. And I think that was
right.
one of the issues with a certain project where the concern was that there wasn't enough room for queuing. So that's something that now you can take a closer look at and make the finding that there is enough space or there's not enough space for queuing.
Okay.
I see Commissioner Say has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to get some clarifications on the tandem parking section. So if I'm reading this correctly, because we haven't allowed tandem parking, have we up till now? Yeah,
So tandem parking we've allowed for uncovered parking spaces, for example, in single family residential zoning districts. We are, with this zoning code update, we're also now allowing it, I believe, with approval of a minor modification for other types of multifamily residential projects like duplexes, fourplexes, or any other multifamily where based on the lot configuration or where the lot size may be too small or restrictive. This gives them a little bit more flexibility in providing that required on-site parking. And the tandem space has to be associated with that unit for the other parking space for the unit. We have accepted parking variances for tandem parking for commercial projects in the past. Again, this, I believe, would make it a minor modification with, findings that you have to make. So this expands it and makes it a little bit clearer where it can be applied.
it doesn't say whether single family dwellings or it's applicable to that. I see single unit dwellings. Is that single family dwellings?
Right. Yeah. So one of the things in the new code you'll see is that we're moving away from single family, multifamily, and using single unit, 2-unit, multi-unit. So you'll see that commonly repeated. And single unit is the same as single family dwelling.
Okay, so one could have, and that this is new. I had always had the understanding that we didn't allow covered tandem parking, like a tandem garage, for example, where one parks one in front of the other. That has not been something we've offered in the past. So until now, this is a new.
Correct. I think, if I remember correctly, to start off, kind of the base for single family parking, single unit residential parking would be that it's not acceptable. So like the standard is, okay, if you're required to have 2 covered parking spaces, they should be side by side. However, this would allow somebody to propose tandem covered parking for a single unit development project with approval of a minor modification if they can show the need for it. So perhaps there might be a large protected size tree that, would have to be removed in order to do a 2-car side by side. Perhaps somebody may want to keep that tree and then do tandem covered parking instead. So, it kind of opens it up for those types of situations where it might be warranted.
Okay, and then one kind of version of that is if there was a property that had a detached 1-car garage in the back corner of the property, and somehow development on the house becomes a 5-bedroom home, whatever reason, and you would need that second covered parking space. Could that be an attached carport, for example, that you would drive through to go to the garage? Could that carport be considered that second covered parking space in tandem?
Right, it could. I mean, typically that carport where you drive through as part of the house might be forward of that garage. So you'll have that kind of porte cochere type element at the front of the house. And you would drive through to the detached garage. So yeah, I think we can consider that as being tandem because it is one in front of the other. Yeah, so
Right.
that's another situation where that can be applied to.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question about parking for electric vehicles. Item B, it says all electric vehicle spaces shall be equipped with electrical vehicle charging equipment as set forth by Cal Green Building Standards Code, the use of which property owner or operator may require payment at his or her discretion. And I just kind of wanted to tease that out a little bit more. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what the charging industry looks like right now, but there are like regular chargers and then there are fast chargers. And the demand is really for those fast chargers, you know, the chargers that'll get your car charged in a matter of a few minutes rather than, you know, having them plugged there all night. And so I'm just curious if maybe we could tease that out a little bit more in B I know that A is, for example, in regards to parking spaces, and they do reference the REACH code for the city and Cal Green code, and they discern that, you know, that we'll use whichever number is higher, if it's the city REACH code or Cal Green code. I think I'd like to see something similar for item B. I'm not sure if this is a draft. I'm not sure if this is complicating things too much, but I kind of wanted to ask that question and make that comment at the same time.
Sure. No, we thank you for your comments. We'll definitely take it into consideration. Whatever's being addressed here tonight is not the final, definitely. I know Kevin is a little bit more familiar with REACH code and perhaps Cal Green building standards. Kevin, do you think we can possibly add a little bit more to that? Maybe I can put it up on the screen here too, just real quick. Let's see. So it'd be this, I don't know if you all see that, but it's B there.
Yeah, it's interesting because that would be exceeding what Cal Green would require. So that would be, in itself sort of a REACH code. I don't think it's something the city could not do. I know that's like a double negative, but so I think it is something the city could do. It is, it would be considered, above and beyond what Cal Green requires. But if that's the kind of reaching that the city wants to do, then I think it's something that could be considered.
Great, thank you so much. I see Commissioner Gall's here. Welcome.
Right.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
We assigned it to you, Mike.
Yeah, it helps if I'm actually looking at the meeting code that's on the current agenda, not on the meeting minutes from May 10th.
Was anybody else in there with you? Or
It's like ground.
One of the things that we did play with a little bit or have a discussion with staff on is the minimum dimension required for a new garage for a single unit or single family home. So currently we require 20 by 20 clear interior for a 2-car garage and 10 by 20 for a 1-car garage. And in our code, for additions to homes, we have accepted 18 by 18 as clear dimensions for an existing garage because many years ago, that kind of was the standard. We saw over and over again, 18 by 18. So we were looking at car sizes, car lengths, that sort of thing, and thought, maybe we can make the requirement for a new garage consistent with existing garages. So what we have proposed in here, and it doesn't have to be this way, we can go back to what we currently have now, is leaving the width requirement the same, but reducing the length from 20 to 18. And just because, your standard vehicle or SUV is probably around 14 to 15 feet long. And then you have a couple extra feet for, maybe a washer and dryer in the garage or shelving or closet space, that sort of thing. So just wanted to point that out. I know we see, a lot of those garages come by us quite a bit, but we can leave it at 20 feet wide by 18 feet deep, or go back to what we currently have, which is 20 by 20. I'm just curious if you had any thoughts on that.
See Commissioner Say or Commissioner Taronis, who had their hand up first.
Commissioner Say, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Just, it's interesting what you just said, Ruben, that people they're leaving some room at the front of the SUV for a washer and dryer. I've always taken the approach that the clear dimension has always had to be clear. So free of hot water heaters, furnaces, and all of that. And wasn't sure in the inspection process whether inspectors come through and look for that clearance inside the garage. So which is it? Can you have an appliance plugged in?
Yeah, no, right. So when we talk about clear area, really the only element or item that we allow to encroach in that clear area is just a door swing. So if you have a door swing into the house, or perhaps a door swing from the side of the garage, into the garage, because that's not a permanent structure, right? Most people are going to close their door. Anything else like a washer, a dryer, a water heater, stairs going up into the house, any closet space, although shelving, that usually comes in after, so we usually don't see that, but more permanent structures like that, we do not allow those to encroach into the clear area. So that would have to be in addition. So that's maybe one thought might be, okay, if you allowed the 18 clear, if someone wants to do a little bit more for those types of elements, like a washer and dryer or whatnot, they can fit that in within those couple extra feet that we would have normally required. But just in terms of reducing footprint impacts on on the lot, if we go 20 by 18, it'll cut out by maybe 20, 30 square feet. It's just more in line with what a lot of the existing garages were built as. So we thought, let's just put that out there and see what you all think.
Well, I guess just following on that, my concern would be that everyone would be, hooray, we can make a smaller garage and get more square footage in the house and all that, and then still put in all the appliances in the way.
Right.
And you can't even
park. And those things could certainly come afterwards, after the project's done and the inspections are done. You're right, but if they go to 18 and they put in something that's 2 to 3 feet deep, that really cuts it down to 15 feet, which I think you could still probably get a car in there, but then it's just hard to maneuver around it, or they might find it inconvenient and not park a car in there after all. So that's a good point.
And we lose the parking. So that would be where I'm a little bit torn. Definitely struggled with, oh gosh, we have to have 20 by 20, fit in, but so I just want to make sure that we also stay practical and that we're not putting ourselves in a position where people are forcing things to happen and then we lose the parking altogether anyway. It's just going to be a glorified storage room.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Commissioner Taronis?
Yeah, I personally would be in favor of reducing the length to the 18 feet. I think, in most new construction, we get a lot of pressure from homeowners and from even developer builders to get that laundry up on a second floor, get the laundry up where your bedroom spaces are. That's sort of the going trend. Everybody wants that. So there isn't as much pressure for some of those utilities. I mean, once you put in, especially in new construction, once you put in a tankless water heater or whatever it is, those appliances are likely not going to migrate, to the front of the garage. And I think just giving over less space to the car, I think would be a good effort. I think I would guess that the 20-foot length is probably a carryover from days past when cars were a lot bigger we just needed that extra space, and it was sort of the standard, a 20-foot long garage. So I think it's a good move. It'll help. Also, I think allow for people to be homeowners and builders to be a little bit more accepting of that detached garage in the rear. It's not quite taking up as much space perhaps in that rear, to where they're not then pressing to have that attached garage out towards the front. So just a thought.
Okay.
Commissioner Camerado. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Now, and then just one point of clarification, we kept the width at 20 feet, and that's just because, we found that most homeowners might want to add the storage or just keep bikes and things along the sides.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't impact the width as much. So
that actually does help, Ruben, with maneuvering into the garage, getting your car doors open. And, because from my experience, that's where homeowners get nervous, when they're having to pull in through an 8-foot door. If that were to be narrowed up, then we would likely get pressure anyway to say, well, can't we make the garage a little bit wider?
Yeah, right.
Okay, Commissioner Camerado.
Hi there. So Ruben, I have a quick question. How many conversions are you seeing from garages to an ADU? So, is that one of my questions is like, so are we making the garages smaller? Fine, that's fine. I can see Commissioner Taronis's point. But then in the city in general, since a lot of people can convert their garages into ADUs, what are you guys seeing at the city level?
Yeah, I don't have those numbers exactly on the conversions. We are processing a lot of ADU permits. I would say quite a few of them are a conversion of existing garages. The difference between let's say a 20 by 20 and 20 by 18 is probably going to be a 40 square feet difference. And we're seeing too that a lot of folks are converting the garage, but they're adding a little bit more to it as well. So, given the number of conversions, we're probably not seeing a high number in terms of the overall number of detached garages we have in Burlingame. But state law and our code allows for conversion plus some expansion. And we're seeing a lot of that happening too, because they're going through all the trouble of converting the garage, and they don't want to be necessarily limited by that existing square footage. So they're adding a little bit more to it as well. So I would, that's a good point. I think just to try to keep that ADU possibility larger, but our ordinances already allow for, some expansion as well.
What was the question I was going to ask? I forgot. Okay.
That's okay.
It'll pop in my mind in a minute.
Yeah. No problem.
Do any other commissioners have any other comments or questions before I open it up for public comment? Oh, I see Commissioner Gall has a question. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed the beginning of this meeting, but are we just basically looking over the whole parking regulations? So,
Right.
Okay, so I was looking at the parking requirements by use in table 25.39. I had a concern about the live workspaces. Should we not be, when I think of a live workspace, I think of, maybe an accountant who would have a client visit their office workspace, or a personal trainer maybe, or massage therapist, something like that. People that have small businesses that are going to have people come to the site. And I know that we discussed it when we were approving some of these projects, but I honestly feel that we should include some additional guests or delivery parking. Some of these people might be having some kind of an internet service where they're getting stuff delivered and then distributing it back out. So FedEx might be showing up every day. And I think that could become problematic.
Okay, yes, certainly we can look at, we can talk to our MIG, our consultant who we're working with. We can look at what other cities might be doing as well in terms of having kind of a standard requirement for each unit, plus maybe a percentage of units require additional parking. But that's a good point. We can certainly.
And it could even be, I would even be okay with if there was just, like at a commercial establishment, if there was just a delivery zone on the side, or for commercial vehicles to park, or well, I guess you'd need guest parking as well. But I think we need to look at something there. I think we're going to have a problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
But perhaps it could be a stall or whatever number of stalls. Perhaps that can be a shared, so it could be either us or for someone.
Even a loading zone that in the street. So
Right. Okay.
Great. Does anybody else have any comments or questions before I open it up to the public? Okay, and with that, I will go ahead and open it for public comments.
All right. Let me just bring that person in. Okay. Russ, if you can unmute yourself and make your comment.
Sure. I have one comment and one question. The first comment is in regards to the 20-foot regulation versus the 18 on garages. The trend is actually that vehicles are getting larger, not smaller. For example, Ford has decided not to sell cars anymore. They only sell SUVs and trucks because that's the trend. So that said, you would think that you'd want to make the garage bigger, not smaller. Secondly, if you're going to try to encourage people to actually pull their car into the garage and still have some storage, again, you'd want the garage to be bigger, not smaller. Thirdly, one of the trends I see is gigantic house, tiny garage. So the proportions are off. So if you make the garage a little bit bigger, the proportion of the large house to the small garage gets a little less of sort of a cattywampus effect. Not that, a couple of feet is going to make that much of a difference, but all of those three comments for me would suggest that you want to make the garage bigger, not smaller. The second comment I have is regarding the tandem parking. This is more of a question than a comment. I'm not sure why the city would not encourage tandem parking. If someone wanted to build a garage that would accommodate 2 cars, that gets 2 cars off of the street. So if they wanted to do that, why not let them do that? I'm not sure why there would be a discouragement of doing that if that's what they wanted to do, rather than force them to have a side-by-side garage. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much for your public comment, Russ. Is there any other public comments before I close the discussion? I'm not seeing any. Okay, shall we move on to the next item, which is the historic resource discussion on the historic resources chapter?
Sure.
Great.
And I will be making that presentation.
Great.
So the historic resources chapter that has been prepared largely incorporates the historic resources regulations that are currently found in Municipal Code 21. So it will look familiar, but it has been expanded to allow the resources to be designated and registered anywhere in the city rather than only downtown. Currently, the chapter only allows properties within downtown to be registered, and in particular to enjoy benefits such as the Mills Act contracts. Registration is voluntary, but I think we've had some instances in the past, whether it's Burlingame Park or other parts of the city, where there may be a property owner who would be interested in registering a property and possibly availing themselves of some of those incentives. The other change was to look at the enforcements and penalties section, and this has been something that there's been a lot of interest in. There was a study session with the City Council earlier this year where we looked at different options for how to have a meaningful response to if there's been an unauthorized destruction of a historic resource. Following the council discussion earlier this year, we had a meeting with some representatives of the National Trust, and they pointed us in the direction of some different ordinances that they thought addressed this kind of enforcement and penalties in a meaningful way, and provided us with some of those resources. One thing we had looked at and has been difficult to gauge is what degree fines can really serve as a deterrent. There's some limitations on what can legally be assessed as a fine. And if the fines aren't high enough to be meaningful, then it just becomes a cost of doing business. So instead, the provisions look more at what would really be central to a project. And that would include, first of all, if a designated historic resource was destroyed without authorization, it would be required to be rebuilt pretty much as it was. And as much as that, the representative of the Historic Trust said, some cities even do that. They consider that to be sort of on the outer edge. And yet this is something Chapter 21 already does in Burlingame, so that was already there. What we've added is a further provision that should there be an unauthorized destruction of a historic resource, that it basically freezes the development capacity of a property for 20 years. And that's pretty significant. We thought that rather than fines, that kind of gets to the heart of, why would somebody possibly destroy a historic resource without authorization? And it's usually in the interest of creating more development capacity. So if there is something that responds to that kind of objective, then that would probably get more attention from a project than simply a fine structure. Having said all that, we are open to other suggestions. We looked at some other ordinances and tried to find what penalties make sense, as well as incentives. We do want the chapter to offer incentives and to really encourage people that do have a property that could be considered historic to go through the process and do an evaluation, determine if they're eligible, and then avail themselves of those incentives. But we also want to not encourage bad actors, so the enforcement mechanisms are in there as well. So with that, that's an overview of where we're at, and I'm happy to take questions. And like I said, we're also open for suggestions of further approaches as well.
Thank you, Director Gardner. I'll open it up to my colleagues on the commission. Commissioner Gall, followed by Commissioner Camarado. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, when I read through this, I like the idea of freezing the property for 20 years just to make them really catch their attention. But let's say somebody did do that. Let's say they, destroyed their building, scraped their lot, and then we potentially be looking at an empty lot for 20 years. I like the idea, but then when you said it, I went, wait a minute. It might just sit. There might be a building in downtown Burlingame that just sits as an empty lot. So, although the idea I think is a good one, I think it's got teeth that we need. I'm not sure that that's the teeth we want to be chewing with.
So the approach, at least how it's conceived, is that it would be, not only would they be kind of frozen for 20 years, they would also have to rebuild the resource. So
Okay.
The resource would come back, but then there wouldn't be this, okay, we'll rebuild it, but then,
But could we in fact force them to rebuild it?
That's how the ordinance is set up. Yes, it would be, there would be a requirement that the resource be rebuilt.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
So my question is, some of these homes, and I am looking at homes, not just the buildings in downtown that are historical, they're really, the older ones are really debilitated and the materials are debilitated. And so how can we ensure that the developer or the individual just says, well, the glass was not safe, or it was falling apart in my hands. It was old stucco that was falling apart in my hands and crumbling. How can we also get a representation of that building or that property? Because if it's not safe, we don't want people living in a place that's not safe. So how do we balance that? I mean, that's my question. Is there a way to balance it? I'm in agreement that we need to have some sort of fines associated with this, but I also want there to be an open communication with individuals so that they know that they don't feel like they're getting stuck in kind of like, well, I'm just going to do it, because then if they can't say anything after the fact. and I'll pay the fine. So how do we get in communications with individuals to kind of still create the beautiful architecture of that property, make it user, to today's standard, safe, and all that stuff? So I guess that's my question. I think more community outreach, maybe.
Sure. So I think part of it is to have the properties eligible for the incentive. So for example, the Mills Act is really intended as a property tax reduction, and the purpose of that is to provide more resources for restoration. So it does assume that there is money that needs to be put into a historic home to restore it and rehabilitate it. So the purpose, and in fact, if somebody applies for a Mills Act contract, they need to come up with a plan that says this is how we're going to restore it. These are the resources we need, and that becomes a justification for the property tax reduction. There are also, if during construction parts of the building are not salvageable, there are also standards for rehabilitation. So you can't recreate something that the process no longer exists. So there are, it does get a little tricky when you're rebuilding something and you're making it look like it would have been. But that's probably where it's a little more gray area. But the intention would be to provide more incentives to provide those resources, and then should something have to be rebuilt, that's part of that rehabilitation plan. And the idea would be that would be something that the Planning Commission would look at, or the Building Division, as part of the building permit, so that's all kind of planned out at the beginning rather than later on or during construction.
Commissioner Say.
Yes, so still on this area F on enforcement and penalties, I'm looking at it from the perspective of someone, whether it's a developer or just a home buyer, who wouldn't know that their property has some historic components until they go and develop their property. Either you want to raise a home and build a new home, and then in that process, there's that discovery. So this is based on all of these like punitive suggestions and stuff is based on knowing that you're on the historic preservation list. And then you can be added to this list as you go along and you discover your property is of historic value of whatever form. And then suddenly you're limited on what you can do. And if there's something like Commissioner Camarado was saying, like something's just poorly built in the past, where it's just kind of worn down and in need of repair or freshened up, then how does one, kind of avoid this and also know what's at stake when they're buying a property? It almost seems like as part of the property or home buying process, you'd have to have some type of historic evaluation for everyone to know ahead of time what you're buying into.
Yeah, and that gets into, we've over the last few years gone kind of around whether to, require evaluations, or the city does a survey, or, how do you figure out whether a property is eligible? This current update does not really approach that. It's looking more at the current regulations in terms of how it really relates to the Environmental Quality Act, and doesn't really try to change the process so much. A historic resource, it doesn't mean something could be designated historic resource. It doesn't mean it can't be altered or even demolished, but there needs to be an authorization for that. It needs to be sort of part of the plan. I think you'll recall the Planning Commission and City Council did approve a mixed-use project that included a historic resource that would be destroyed. And in that case, it was the events that occurred there rather than the architecture. So that was part of that discussion. So, so I think the chapter tries to encourage and make it more more beneficial to a property owner to do a restoration, but it doesn't say you can't alter or change a resource. It just is basically saying you can't do it without permission. So it's really meant to draw the line at doing something without permission and asking for forgiveness later. It isn't to say you can't ask for permission in the first place. If that makes sense.
And Director Gardner, can I add on to that real quick?
Sure.
So I just did want to point out, a lot of this is going to be centered around the fact that the Planning Commission will be acting as the Historic Preservation Commission in this. So there are a lot of avenues that can be taken by a homeowner who perhaps got a home that has historic value, but then doesn't want it on the register anymore. There is a chapter about deletion from the register, which would allow that applicant to go in front of the Historic Commission, and the commission could say, okay, we will take that off the register. So I think it's important to remember that this is entirely voluntary to be put on it. A lot of people are going to be doing it for the preservation incentives that they get from it, but they can request deletion from it as well. So I think that's something to keep in mind. We also saw a lot of this play out, and I did want to point out on the post office redevelopment project, there was extra protections in that, and something I know we're talking a lot about enforcement tonight. We've never had the chance or never needed to use the ability to regulate that enforcement on a historic resource recently, at least, since this has been in place that I can remember. So to Commissioner Gall's point, we could take something to a court case to enforce this provision saying, no, you do have to rebuild this building. That's something that we don't have in our non-historic inventory. That's what a lot of that study session was talking about. What can we do when it's not necessarily a designated historic resource? But when a person voluntarily puts himself on the register, they have subjected themselves to that extra enforcement. So in these sort of instances, we would be able to go into court and have a much, much stronger argument that we need to rebuild this resource as it was. Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, thanks for those clarifications. So I had a few things that more about some of the language is written into this document. So as I read F2, that last sentence, the site may not be developed in excess of the floor area or lot coverage of the historic structure for a period of 20 years. I read that to mean that if there's any development on the site, it can't be larger than the floor area of the original historic. So if it was a 100-square-foot shed on this property, that would be the extent of development that could be built. Is that correct in how I'm reading it?
Yes. So what it really says is, yeah, you would rebuild whatever was there before. If it was all that was there was a shed, but it was a historic shed, it would be rebuilt, and then no more development could occur for 20 years. So if they said, oh, well, we were going to have the shed and then add this other whole piece in the back, it would not allow that. And that is meant to be the sort of punitive side, which is to get the attention and say, it's one thing to rebuild, but then that doesn't get you out of jail. You still are penalized by not being able to have the development capacity that might have been assumed in the first place.
Yeah, so I think I understand what this is saying, but I'm trying to think from what a layperson's reading this. It sounds like you can build another 100-square-foot something somewhere on the property. Doesn't have to be that shed or in that location. So I don't know if it's a little bit of refining the language to clarify that is the floor area or lot coverage of the original footprint of that historic structure, so that you can understand. Because what if it was 1,000-square-foot something and it's enough to build a house? But so that's what I mean by, that's a
good distinction. We can look at that wording so it's a little more clear.
Okay. And then under quorum, I'm again, just making sure I'm reading this correctly. A majority of the voting members, exclusive of absences and recusals, meaning that we must have 4. Always a quorum of 4 to vote.
Yeah.
Not a quorum of whoever's attending the meeting.
That's correct. So it would be similar to how the planning commission is, that you must have the 4 to even, to start the meeting or to take a vote.
Okay, and then under C5, criteria for including resources in the register, Did we want to add the word event to structures that are identified with a person or event? I know we recently took one off because of an event, but there could be a situation where there's an event that we would want to preserve a historic structure. So that's C5 under 25.35.040.
Yeah, I would think so. That may have been that would make sense, and particularly, the one that was looked at previously had it was significant for the event in particular. So I think that's a good addition.
Like if there's a building where they signed the Declaration of Independence here in Burlingame.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Sorry, I'm taking up all the time. I was also going to say for powers and duties of the commission. So there's a long list of items giving us lots of power and duties. But realistically, should it be stating that under the leadership or guidance of the director or the planning department or something? Because unless we're going to, on our own, regularly have meetings and actions that actually address all 12 items. I'm wondering if it should be kind of led by, I mean, usually we kind of follow your guidance and your leadership in discussing a topic or whatever, and wondering if that needs to be added.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. So yeah, let us take that and look at that in terms of at least to maybe indicate how the staff ties into all of that, and maybe there's an additional bullet that just mentions how staff provides guidance or what have you.
Okay, great.
Commissioner Torones, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just want to go back to the enforcement for just a quick second. I think we've got two different profiles for applicants potentially. As Scott was explaining, we have those who are interested in availing themselves of the incentives and the opportunities with the historic preservation. And I think those are going to be those applicants are going to more likely want to follow the rules and seek guidance when they run into situations where something is not, it's not possible to retain something like Commissioner Camarado was saying is falling apart in their hands or something. They're gonna seek guidance, I think generally. And I think similar to our design guidelines, like we've talked about, we have to have some method for explaining to them what is it that's contributing to the historic status of your project, of your property, so that it's clear to them what the issues are that need to be retained, maintained, restored, etc. Just like with our design guidelines, like we've talked about, to try to avoid those as-built changes down the line. Then we got the other profile of those applicants, kind of like Commissioner Camarado was saying, where the historic status is sort of foisted upon somebody, through one method or another. We had the project, just as an example, on Bernal, in which, it came to light as to what the status was. And so those applicants, we have to accept the fact that they're going to be less interested in some of that preservation, and then they're going to be less interested in seeking guidance along the way. And like we're saying, sort of begging forgiveness after the fact. And I think we have to similarly, though, go through the same routine of educating them as to what the contributing factors are. That first of all, it's not prohibiting you from improving your property, but these are the contributing factors for the historic status of your property or your structure. And these are the things that need to be preserved. And so therefore, I think we might have to, as Commissioner Say was saying, we might need a little bit more either detail or teeth in the chapter number 2 under enforcement, because my concern is we may have situations where it's not a wholesale demolition of a property that, oops, accidentally got torn down because the demolition subcontractor didn't get word soon enough or something of that sort. But we have other situations where we have structures like the one on Bernal, where it wasn't the whole structure that was being preserved, but we had elements that were contributing to the historic status that were taken and thrown away because they were falling apart in someone's hands and nobody asked for guidance. So I think we may need to somehow address those situations, whether we can enforce some penalty, because if it's simply replicating what was there, that's what they wanted to do anyway. But we've then sort of lost the historic status, and they just rebuild and or replicate what was there, and they achieve what they want. But we as the people of the state of California have lost those historic elements of that project. So we may need a little bit more detail for those situations where something is demolished, meaning, you know, portions or pieces are thrown away without asking for permission. And then we have a situation, because like Jennifer Pfaff was, and I'm sorry to drone on, but as Jennifer was saying in her letter to us, and she may speak to this, you know, then if they just get what they want and then their house can't be touched or enlarged or whatever for 20 years, then they've gone along their way and we've lost the historic resource. So I think there just needs to be something in there for those situations, and I'm not exactly sure how that gets crafted. So I would kind of hope that you guys could noodle on that and come back with something to help us out. Anyway, thank you.
You can certainly noodle on it, and yeah, it's a good point, because it could be more specific to yeah, what are the particular elements that are historically significant in the first place, and then really focus on the importance of those being retained.
Yeah, and then what's the penalty if they're not, and you know, what can we do in those situations to just sort of give some teeth to this thing, to where it will encourage them to pay more attention along the way and seek guidance when they run into those situations. Thank you.
Okay, I want to also leave time for public comment. So Commissioner Camarado, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I have to say is sometimes, you know, individuals, they kind of understand, but they're not contractors. It's their contractors that are doing the work. And we can't really hold the contractor liable, right? Because it's the property owner and they're trusting their contractor to do the right thing. So I think we need to have something where the property owner and the contractor, whoever that might be, signs a document stating that they understand the consequences of what it is, what's historic, and what the consequences will be. A very separate letter stating that, so that everyone is very clear what it is and very transparent.
Thank you, Commissioner Camarado. I'm going to make a quick comment, two quick comments. Number 2, under powers and duties. For me, it's a little murky. I'm not quite understanding. It says the designation of historic resources, including historic districts, landmark sites, and landmarks within the city, including all information required for each designation. So if it is voluntary, it looks like this definition here is lumping a lot of other kind of sites that may not be in the public way. But you clarified this, City Attorney Stansfield, you clarified this, that this would be voluntary though, right?
Inclusion for a private property on there would be voluntary. So I think what this is speaking to, and Director Gardner can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is going to be designating historic sections of the city or landmarks within the city. So that's not necessary. That's more of a public property rather than a private.
Okay.
Even though private property may exist on the public property as a landmark.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was a little confused. And then the second comment I'll make is I would rather see a lot of the powers and duties living in the code itself rather than living in the Planning Commission. So I will just make mention of that comment, that I would rather see many of the powers and duties living in the code itself and not delegated to the Planning Commission, because then there could be unintended consequences from my perspective. So I'll leave it at that. I am going to go ahead and to respect everybody's time, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to public comments. It looks like we have 2 speakers today.
Hi, are you saying Jennifer? I don't know. I don't even know who else is there. I'm sorry. Do you want me to talk?
Go ahead, Jennifer.
All right. Thank you. Everyone has made really good comments, and I think I'm a little more clear on this far. I had very similar comments to Commissioner. I'd say it's just very confusing to me what exactly that meant. Do they have to just put they get to put the whole approved project back? They have to put back the original. And so maybe offline I can talk to Kevin or Ruben specifically what was meant, but that was confusing to me. Secondly, it irritates me that somebody, and let's not just focus on Bernal, but that is in my head, somebody could get a variance, i.e. for a much narrower driveway than anybody else could get for the promise of working on this historic community. Well, I'm not saying community building, but a benefit to the community. But then when this didn't happen, it continues, even though they don't avail themselves or can no longer avail themselves of Mills Act benefits, they continue to have the benefit of something extra that the normal person would not have gotten, the variance under normal circumstances. So that part isn't, that part should also be restored, so-called restored, back to a normal driveway width in this case, in my opinion. But as a broader issue, because I don't want to take everyone's time, what is the default if we are not going to be investing in a, for example, with Broadway, I'm just thinking of Broadway, in a specific plan that looks at the affected properties that we're hoping are redeveloped, then what is the default mechanism? Is there some kind of a trigger, CEQA trigger, I don't know the words, negative deck or something, and if it were a negative deck, and what is that? How far do we have, how many properties would need to be felled or destroyed to get to the negative deck point or any kind of CEQA review? And would that include a historic element? And so that is the part where I feel like this just, it's not enough meat there. That's it.
Thank you for your comment, Jennifer. Let's move on to the next public comment. We have Kathy, I believe.
There you go. Everyone can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I've been promoted to a panelist according to my computer. Hi, I'm Kathy Baylock. I'd like to just say that I've been advocating for this since 1997, which is about almost 25 years, to have some sort of designation and incentive for historic properties. So I'm glad to see we're moving forward with the Mills Act. I have a question and a couple of comments. The question is, from what I'm reading, it says that there will only be a penalty for, quote, a designated resource, which makes me believe that, say, for example, a house that was found to be historic in Burlingame Park through the planning process, design review process, is not a designated resource according to this definition. So if the person with the historic resource does something they haven't asked to be a resource, they won't be subject to any of this. That's the way I read it. So you don't have to answer that right now. And what happens in the cases of demolition by neglect where an historic property's been identified and then the homeowner just lets it fall into disrepair? You know, normally ordinances have some qualification for people to just let their properties rot as well. Commissioner Say had asked about how does the general public know when they're buying a house, and that's the benefit of having an historic resource survey, as we did with the downtown plan. What I'd like to point out, and I understand it won't be happening, is that not only does it identify which buildings are historic, it also identifies which are not. And it's a good roadmap to navigate, you know, because we have the Eichlers now that are over 50 years and other parts of the city that aren't as obvious that that we need to think about. So instead of, what this does is reacts to things. So I understand we're not doing that, but wanted to mention that. That would be a great way to publicize to the general public. The question of powers of duties, quorum of 4, I don't have a strong feeling about it, but I sort of envision this being a subcommittee of the Planning Commission that would meet separately and could go into more depth to study the individual applications for historic designation in Mills Act. That might be one way that, if there are 3 members that are more interested in seeing that. And the last thing is Jennifer brought up the Broadway Historic Resource Inventory, and just wanted to make the point that since we've changed the zoning on Broadway to include residential, we are in fact inviting redevelopment. And wouldn't it make sense to have an historic resource inventory done of Broadway and California Drive? Because in essence, we know things are going to be changed, where in residential, it's not as obvious that someone might demolish the property. So those are my comments, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Looks like we have one more. Russ is going to provide public comment.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to dovetail on what both Jennifer and Kathy were saying. I too, along with Jennifer and Kathy, have been advocating for preservation ordinances for at least 25 years. And I think we do have to remember, and one of the commissioners, if not 2 of the commissioners, have mentioned the community education component. Well, the best way to educate the community is to have a historic inventory of the entire city. I believe a majority of the cities along the peninsula do have those inventories in place today, and they were put in place many years ago. And Burlingame has always resisted the notion of doing a list. And I'm hoping that this planning commission, acting as the historic commission as well, will be forward thinking enough into considering an idea like this, not by simply doing historic inventories of the business districts like we have in downtown, and perhaps now considering Broadway, but do it of the entire city. Quite frankly, the majority of houses that have been built in Burlingame are over 50 years. So there's a likelihood that there's some aspect of some houses that are historic. But as Kathy mentioned, I would think a historic survey would reveal that more houses are not historic than are. But it's the easiest way, by far the easiest way, to determine whether you're purchasing a home that is potentially historic at the very least. So I would ask you to consider that. I know that's a heavy lift. I know that other commissions and other councils have resisted doing it, but maybe the time has come to at least consider it and start that conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russ. I am muted, and with no further public comments, I'm going to now close the public comment section of this meeting. And I know we're 6 minutes over the meeting. Planning Manager Huron, is there anything else before we adjourn?
No, I think that's it. We appreciate your time in looking at those 2 chapters, offering those questions and comments. Also want to thank the public for their comments as well for us to consider. And we'll move forward and make some adjustments after discussing it some more with staff. So thank you very much. Thank you all.
Hey,
Thank you.
Ruben, can you send me the link for the next meeting? Sorry, I don't seem to have it.
Oh, it's the same one. We're just going to continue. We're going to continue on here. We're just going to transition into the regular meeting here in a second. Yeah. All right. So we can now move on to our regular Planning Commission meeting, 7 p.m. 7:07 p.m.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:07 p.m. Welcome to the June 14th, 2021 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all those in attendance today, please note that this Planning Commission meeting is being held using Zoom webinar format. So you will see the planning commissioners and staff are panelists. Please note that there are several ways to submit comments during this meeting. You may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the raise hand button located on the bottom of your screen. Members of the public who are participating in Zoom webinar by phone call can dial *9 to raise a hand. You may also send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted during the meeting, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. If you are an applicant or applicant's representative, I will ask that you raise your hand when your agenda item is up for discussion so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. We ask that you also turn on your video at the time so we can have a more clearer communication, stimulating experience we would have if we were meeting in person. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and we will upload it to the city's website after the meeting. And with that, can I get agenda item 2 roll call, please?
We don't need a roll call vote, but we should just hear who's here and who's absent.
Okay. The record should note that 5 members of our commissioners are present this evening. Chair Schmidt and Vice Chair Loftus are absent. I will move on to agenda item 3, approval of minutes. We have minutes to review and approve this evening from the May 10th regular Planning Commission meeting. Do we have any comments, changes, or discussions for the minutes? Any motions?
I move to approve the meeting minutes.
I second. I'll go ahead. Commissioner Taronis seconded. All right.
And I will take a roll call vote now. Commissioner Camarado.
Aye.
Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis.
Aye.
Commissioner Say.
Aye.
Acting Chair Larios.
Aye.
Okay. The motion passes 5-0-0-2.
Excellent. Let's move on to agenda item 4, approval of the agenda. Staff, are there any changes to the agenda? Do we have any recusals this evening?
From staff, we would like to note that item 7A 2013 Easton Drive, which is on the consent calendar, has been continued to the June 28th meeting for a lack of quorum, meaning that there are not enough commissioners to vote on that item due to absences and recusals. So again, 2013 Easton Drive has been continued to the June 28th Planning Commission meeting. Other than that, staff has no other changes.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'll be recused on item 9C 1204 El Camino Real as I have a business relationship with the owner, property owner. Thank you.
And Commissioner Chair, I will be recusing from item 7B since I have a business relationship with the owner.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, no, then I would like to note that I was not able to visit any of the sites this week. And I wanted to note that for the record. And we will now move to agenda item number 5, public comments, non-agenda. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission agenda may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Braun Act prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. A timer will sound at the end of each time. I may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers. Please speak clearly into the microphone when it is your turn to speak. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item.
And Acting Chair Larios, just for the record, we did not receive any public comment emails either for that section there.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 6, study items. It looks like we have no study items for review this evening. So we will go ahead and move on to agenda item 7, consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine. They are acted on simultaneously unless a separate discussion and/or action is requested by the applicant, a member of the public, or a commissioner prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt. As previously noted, item 7A, 2013 Eastern Drive has been continued to the June 28th meeting. Therefore, we have one item on the consent calendar. Item 7B, 1349 Cabrillo Avenue.
And we just,
Did any members of the commission want to pull that item? And then we would ask if any members of the public wanted to pull that item. Seeing none, Chair Larios, I believe you can take a motion.
Great. So I will entertain a motion for this item.
Mr. Chair, I'll make,
Commissioner Taronis.
yeah, thank you. I'll make a motion to approve item 7B 1349 Cabrillo Avenue with the conditions as identified in the staff report.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. May we please have a roll call vote?
yes, Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Acting Chair Larios.
Aye.
Great. So the motion passes 4010. Sorry, 4012.
Thank you. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. I will now move on to agenda item number 8, regular action items. And it looks like there are no regular action items this evening. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, now let's go ahead to agenda item number 9, design review study items. Agenda item 9A, 2035 Paloma Avenue. If you are the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were there any commissioners who were not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, I guess we can move on to a staff report. Can we hear the staff report, please?
This application is for design review. The applicant is proposing to demolish an existing one-story house to build a new two-story single-family dwelling and convert the existing detached garage into a new garage and ADU. The proposed house will have 4 bedrooms and a total floor area of 3,256 square feet, where 3,267 square feet is the maximum allowed. This concludes summary of the staff report. I'm available to answer any questions for staff.
Any questions for staff? Okay, I am going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project?
Yeah, hi, James Chu, Chu Design Associates. I really don't have anything to add. As you can see, this is a very straightforward project. It's a spec home, and we're rebuilding it, and a 2-story, 4 bedrooms, and also keeping the footprint of the existing garage to accommodate an ADU. This is design review meeting, so I'd like to hear your comments and answer any question you may have. Hello? Yes, I'm done.
Go ahead, Commissioner Say. Sorry, I did not see your hand up.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, James, did you provide a 3D view of some sort for us to see the massing of this house? My particular area that I'm interested in is that flat roof to the left of the gable above the front door. It's quite a big, I think it's like measures 15 feet front to back. And I'm just curious how that looks in three dimension.
Okay, so are you saying you want to see prospect drawings?
Did you provide one?
No, I didn't. Then I could next go around.
Okay. I'd like to, yes, thank you. Just so I can better understand what's happening there. I can't tell from the side elevation.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taronis, go ahead. You're on mute, Mr. Taronis.
So sorry. James, I'm looking at the front elevation. I like what's happening on the porch roof. On the left side, it looks like it just goes straight back as sort of a gable. But then when I look at the left elevation, it looks like you might have been contemplating a hip at some point on that roof.
That's correct.
So
right.
That left elevation, that should just be drawn as a shed that engages the house, right?
That's correct.
Okay, good, because I think it would look kind of odd on the front elevation if that were a hip. I think it finishes off nicely on that left-hand edge if it's just a simple shed that goes back to the house. So if you can correct that. When
yes,
we
I will.
back for action. Thank you.
I will.
That was the only question I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of my other fellow commissioners have any questions? Seeing none, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Were any comments received through the email or Zoom chat?
No comments were received through email.
Okay, then I am going to close the public hearing. My fellow commissioners, do we have any comments or any motions? Commissioner Taronis, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think it's a well-crafted house. The massing is well done. The plate heights appear to be appropriate at 9.6 and 8.1. It's well below the allowable height. They're not asking for anything other than design review considerations. I agree with Commissioner Say it might be helpful to see that 3D rendering, but even then, I think that could come back before us. I think that this is a good candidate for the consent calendar. And if there's something that we see as a result of that 3D view, we could always pull it from consent. But that's just that's where I'm at on the project.
Did you make a motion?
Sorry, I didn't want to be presumptive to make a motion, but I will. I'll make a motion to bring this back on the consent calendar.
I'll second that motion.
Great. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, may we please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Camarado? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Emily.
Commissioner Camarado?
Aye.
Commissioner Gall?
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis?
Aye.
Commissioner Say?
Aye.
Acting Chair Larios?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0-0-2. And this action is not appealable.
Thank you. We are now going to move on to agenda item 9B, 1233 Drake Avenue. If you are the applicant or applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video. Oh, I lost you, sorry. We also ask that you turn on your video. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and move on to the staff report. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, just give me 1 second here. All right. This is an application for design review for a new 2-story single-family dwelling and detached garage at 1233 Drake Avenue, zoned R1. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing single-family dwelling and detached garage to build a new proposed development. The proposed house and garage will have a total floor area of 3,417 square feet, or 3,420 square feet is the maximum allowed. There are 2 protected size oak trees on the property that are proposed to be retained as part of this project. Staff requested an arborist report to detail the tree protection measures that may be required during construction to protect both of these trees. Staff notes that this report will be submitted and approved or reviewed by the city arborist prior to us bringing the project back to you for action. This concludes my staff report, and I can take any questions of staff if you have any at this time.
Do my fellow commissioners have any questions? Mr. Torres, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not muted. Oh, good, thank you. Okay, thank you. Just a couple of questions, James. So looking at the rear elevation above the large bifolding doors, there's that flat portion of roof that heads back to the main house. Now that flat portion, am I correct in assuming that that's not going to be deep enough that somebody won't want to put a deck out onto that flat roof? Is that correct?
No, that's correct. It is our intention to keep it as a roof,
Okay.
not a balcony.
Okay, I just see windows that go out to the master bedroom. So, okay, so it'll just be roof. My other question is in regards to the left side elevation. If we could look at that can we bring that up on screen possibly? Yeah. So I'm looking at the left elevation and the entry gable. Where'd it go? There it is. So James, would it be possible, it seems a little odd, the pediment over the porch that is landing and abutting that bay that I think is at the stair.
Oh, yeah.
Is it possible to get an engaged pilaster at that edge that just abuts to that stair right in there, just so that pediment can kind of finish itself off rather than just kind of being, I know it's a flush wall that comes out to the face of that, but I think even if it was an engaged column, that or pilaster that was attached to that wall, it could be a little bit proud of that stairwell or maybe just tucked up against it, and then finish off that gable with a column on each side underneath that the triangle pediment of the
Right.
roof.
Yes.
Is that doable, or am I missing something?
I think it's doable,
Okay.
and that will look better.
Yeah, I think it would finish it off nicely. And when I look at the plan, it just means that, where the butts to the stair, you would just have to work a pilaster in there that it's engaged in the wall. You might have to bring your porch column out to the left a little bit so that the face, the column and the pilaster are aligned. But anyway,
Correct.
Dialogue that with you. And so
yes,
if you're agreeable to it, if you can make that change, I think it would help.
Yes, I definitely will.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
That front corner will be visible along the driveway. So
correct.
That was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any of my fellow commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Were any comments received through email or through the Zoom chat?
Yeah, so it looks like we have one member of the public, so I'll bring that person in. And we have no other comments or emails for this.
Thank you. Mr. LeBerc, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that well, or Christopher, if you prefer that, go ahead.
Yes, Christopher. I can put my video on too, if it works. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. I live next door. I think the design looks great. This might not be the right forum, but I'm kind of new to this. So just a quick question. I have like 2 young children, and our seating area is like immediately next to the house. During the demolition and construction, is there going to be a dust barrier of some kind put up? Like one of those walls like you see, or like a tent or something like that, to sort of prevent basically everything falling into our yard and us breathing in asbestos and whatever else is in the place?
We can have the applicant respond to that unless you have any other comments or questions.
That's it. So, yeah.
Thank you for your question, Chris.
Well, so the construction will be pretty much, per the standard, what is allowed and what's required by the city of Burlingame Building Department. We do notice there's very light fencing between our neighbors, and so perhaps we can have a temporary fencing along the right. By the way, the neighbors is on the right.
Yes, yeah, we're on the right.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
correct.
So,
correct. So 1245 Drake, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously we haven't, select our contractor, but we obviously are willing to work with our neighbors. So if you can perhaps send me your email and contact information, we will share our contractors info with you during construction. So again, we could probably put up a temporary fencing between us doing construction, and we built a new fence afterwards. But that's something we can obviously discuss, privately.
Perfectly. Yes, that's appropriate. Is your contact information on the design or on the, what's the?
The contractor haven't been selected yet, but you can always contact me.
Okay, I will, got it. I will reach out to you with that. And yeah, that seems appropriate to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing that we don't have any other emails or anything on the Zoom chat, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioner Say, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I lost my internet connection, so I had to come back in. So I missed the part when we were asking questions of James. And I don't know if this was brought up, but I just had a quick comment, James, about the windows that are directly above the entry door. From what I measure on the plans, it looks like the sill height may be 24 inches from the floor. And I know it's a bedroom. And to me, that window looks a little bit top heavy above the entry area. And I noticed also there's a house down the street on the same, on Drake, a little bit further down on the other side of the street, that also has a similar sized window over the entry door. And I had the same reaction to that home having kind of a top heavy windows right above the entry door. I just wondered if you wanted to rethink the sill height there, since it's a private bedroom and 24 inches being a fairly low sill at a bedroom.
Okay, we can look into that and perhaps reduce a foot to the window.
Okay.
I think that would probably look better.
I think it will look a little bit more balanced. Do you have the same size window on the rear elevation too? I understand that's looking out from the bathtub in the primary bathroom. So maybe that's intentional to gain some more view out to the backyard. And that's the rear facing side of the house. So not as, obviously not visible from the street. So if that's something you prefer to keep at a lower sill, I can understand that. But
Yeah.
just wanted to call
Yeah.
that to attention too.
Okay, yeah, we'll probably, make all these window, the front, the left, the rear, the same size, so they will look more consistent. Yeah, if you look at the right elevation,
Mhm.
the gable window and the front gable and the rear gables, they're all the same size. So if we reduce the front, we probably will end up reduce the right and the rear as well.
I think that might feel a little better.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Say. Okay, do any of my fellow commissioners have any comments or any motions?
Commissioner Larios, just because we did reopen the public hearing for a second there, we want to make sure that no other members of the public have any questions or comments.
Thank you. I will go ahead and ask if we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, either through the public comments chat or through email.
We have received no emails through public comment chat.
Thank you very much. I am going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And now I'm going to shift over to my fellow commissioners. Do we have any comments or any motions on this particular item? Mr. Taranas, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I feel similarly about this project. It's again, well-crafted, nicely detailed. It's sort of a fairly simple, I don't know what kind of style we describe to it, but I think the simple detailing is nice and quiet. I think will fit in nicely with the neighborhood. I'm glad to see that they're preserving the existing oak trees. I think that tree in front really sort of sets the site in terms of the face print. The plate heights are not overly tall. The only thing they're asking for is design review. So I'll make a motion again to bring this back on the consent calendar when they've responded to our comments.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, may we please have a roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Taranas,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Acting Chair Larios.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 5002. This motion is not appealable.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to agenda item 9C. This is 1204 El Camino Real. If you are the participant, if you are the applicant or applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project?
No, Mr. Chair, but again, I'll be recused on this item as I have a business relationship with the property owner. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taranas. All right, can we hear a staff report, please?
The proposed project is subject to commercial design review since more than 50% of the facade is being altered. At the front of the building, the existing roll-up doors would be removed and replaced with a new aluminum storefront. The existing building is non-conforming in parking since there is no on-site parking. The existing automobile and office uses have a parking demand of 12 parking spaces. The proposed parking demand for retail, personal service, and office uses is 20 parking spaces. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a parking variance for the difference in parking spaces not provided on site. Staff notes that an email was received after preparation of the staff report expressing concerns with the proposed application. This concludes summary of the staff report. I'm available to answer any questions for staff.
Thank you very much. Do any of my fellow commissioners have any questions for staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project?
Yes, my name is Suhail Shatar. I'm the architect. I'm involved with this project to set up a exclusive boutique and a small hair salon inside a space that used to be an automotive repair shop and tire shop. There is no parking at the present site. There is parking across the street behind the Chase Bank as part of public parking. There is the Burlingame commercial strip, which is part of the parking area. And I believe there's another parking lot a block away that is a public parking lot. This site, we see it as an extension of the Burlingame commercial strip. And we see that since there is limited parking, this is an opportunity for an exclusive boutique shop. I believe Andrea, she's the owner of B Chic Boutique, and they're in San Carlos. They're moving to the site. The site is owned by the owner of the gas station on the corner. So both properties right next to each other. It's one owner. There's the ability for drop-off delivery service to be handled from the gas station since it's adjacent to this property. And there is also the ability for some handicap parking on that site that can be taken advantage of. Since there is no parking and we don't want anyone to come off of El Camino Real to park in front of the space, we might set up some bollards and maybe set up some planting in front of the boutique for the benefit of the people, and so no one pulls up into that driveway and creates some sort of disturbance along El Camino Real. Our concern is to set up a business which could be, not a long-term business, but probably a business, more short-term. I think the owner of both properties wants to look at a future development on this site. There's a gas station and the adjacent warehouse building, which has a beautiful truss vaulted ceiling with concrete perimeter walls. And it could make a great setting for a very exclusive boutique and hair salon. And the exclusive boutique shop is limited, and they cater to weddings and special events and so on. And it's not really a high traffic boutique. So we would like to support for this facility and consider that it's not, it might be 5 years or maybe a little bit longer before any kind of proposal for future development on these two sites, merging the two properties together and bringing in the potential future facility with some mixed use commercial and residential above. So we would like your support. There is some discussion, I believe somebody commented that the occupant load factor for the site is 99 people, but we did a study and we looked at the actual usable area around all the fixtures and everything, and we realized that the actual area that we're using, if you run the occupant load factor, we're under 50 people. So, and usually that many people don't frequent this kind of high-end, unique, selective boutique. So I guess Andrea might be on Zoom also. She's the owner, and she might have a few words to say as well. So if you have any questions for me here, I'm trying to get my video on, so I have visual communication, but I'm having some difficulty. Thank you.
Thank you. Do my fellow commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Gall, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. First off, I know you just spoke about planters or ballers, because that was one of my concerns about there's constantly cars parked on the sidewalk now. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's a Caltrans easement or right of way. Have you spoken with Caltrans at all about the project?
We have not. We will be speaking to Caltrans in order for us.
Okay. And then maybe the other is on your variance application. I'm not quite understanding your your answer to describe the exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to your property which do not apply to other properties in the area. Or I guess even just the extraordinary or exceptional circumstance.
Well, the extraordinary circumstance, I guess we're not on Broadway, number one. We're right off of the Broadway strip. We're really not unique because all the shops along the Broadway strip really don't have parking. They just have on-street parking. So we're trying to fit into the same character as the Broadway strip, since it's one property adjacent to the Broadway strip. So maybe we didn't do a good job at answering that appropriately. But we feel that there's parking, along the strip and adjacent, behind the Chase Bank, which provides access from across the street.
Okay, and then the same question on your answer to question B. Why is the variance request necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the substantial property right? Because I've been living in the neighborhood for over 30 years, and it always seems that building has always had a tenant. I mean, it's been automotive, but I'm not sure how your answer answers the question about the being necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the substantial property right. Maybe if you could expand on that for me.
Well, I mean, it is a vacant building that has potential to house a business. We feel that another automotive repair or automotive type of business at that location would have more automobile impact along El Camino Real. We felt that this unique boutique would be, kind of a welcomed business for the district. And we feel that it would actually have less impact on the El Camino side of automotive repair coming in and out, which has created probably more hazardous conditions. I know the gas station, of course, has in and out traffic all the time, and that's managed, but it has access from Broadway as well. So why it's unique? It's just unique because it's a beautiful space that could create. It can have a beautiful business within it.
But the building is being used currently, correct?
It's being used for storage primarily, and I wish I had the photograph to show you. There's a stored vintage cars right now, and then there is a temporary smog repair shop in just one corner, which is the furthest to the left and furthest towards the front. It only has one bay for one car.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, and again, it's short-term tenant. They're leaving shortly.
The tenant that's in there now?
Correct. The smog repair.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do any, Commissioner Say, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Is this the same business as the Be Chic in Belmont?
It is the Be Chic in Belmont, and Andrea, I believe, is losing her business. Not losing, but she's losing her lease, and it's a small space there, and she has lots of very nice inventory, and I think she would like the space that she can spread out the inventory and have people actually, visualize the merchandise better. And that's why she looked at the space as being an ideal location.
Okay, thank you. I've been a customer of the Be Chic in Belmont, and I acknowledge that it is a small space and can't accommodate too many people at any one time. The times that I've gone, I think I had to come by appointment. I think that was the arrangement. Is that the
by appointment? Yes. Hi, I'm Andre from Be Chic.
Hi. Yes, I just have a few questions for you with regards to how the business operates in this planned scenario. Will you still be taking appointments only for?
Yes. I was doing that during COVID, and I feel that works best because I give my customers one-on-one. And customers love that. They love that, special attention. And I was looking at the spot because my inventory is currently so crammed. You can't see my dresses. And that's the reason why we want it to be in a bigger location, more spread out. Yeah, and they are exclusive and high end. So we would love the opportunity to have the spot. And primarily my business is online. So, we do ship, and it's very difficult to work out of the spot right now.
I can see how that's the case. So at your current location, I don't seem to remember that there were the hair services, the salon services.
No, so this is an extension.
So this is an extension. And how do you envision, would someone who's coming here to get their hair styled or colored or serviced, is this the same customer that's also shopping for their prom dress or bridesmaid's dress?
Yes. That is.
So it's almost like a makeover.
It's a one-stop shop. Yeah, come in to be chic and get your hair, makeup. Something like this doesn't exist, and I feel it's time to expand the business a little bit. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about it. I look forward to, I look forward to it.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. And then, so can you tell me what would be the average length of an appointment for a customer kind of beginning to end?
It's an hour.
Including getting their hair styled?
No, hairstyle, I mean, it depends what they're getting, if it's dyeing, it's about 2 hours. Haircut, it just all depends. It varies between 1 to 2 hours.
Okay. And then you have what looks like you have 7 fitting rooms.
Yes.
And the stairs are for just kind of posing, or does that lead to?
That leads to, so we're planning to do bridal, but more exclusive bridal, but not, we haven't done bridal before, and I thought, why not start carrying it? And that's what the upstairs is. It's bridesmaids and bridal.
It looks to me like you could accommodate quite a number of customers at any one time with a space of this size. So I've experienced your Belmont space, and I think when we were there must have been 6 customers in there for that appointment time. And so what do you foresee? I mean, I know you have a guesstimate in your application, but with this space, with the 2 floors and all the space that you have with also the hair salon services and makeup.
I'm not sure when did you come to the store?
What season? It was not prom season. It was for my daughter's fashion show at her high school.
Pre-COVID?
Oh yeah, it was pre-COVID.
Yeah. So now we're different. So we've definitely, we limit the amount of customers in there. I do max 2 to 3 people. Again.
Andre, may I chime in just a little bit and ask a question or two? I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andre, but it's by appointment only now, and eventually, you'll have more employees to help other customers. So the appointments aren't exclusively only by Andre or 1 or 2 helpers. I imagine you'll have more helpers, and you'll have stylists for the hair salon. So you'll probably have more people, but I believe it still will be limited to the appointments so that you have the one-on-one with your customers along with your employees. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then another question just about logistics. So you don't have a rear exit or any side access entry doors that I can see. So all deliveries are through the front doors, and customers, everybody comes through the front doors only. I know there's 3 doors coming into the boutique, but is that correct?
Commissioner say that is correct. We did actually propose a side access that actually has direct access on the gas station site, which is owned by the same owner. Yet that could be an emergency egress. We do meet with the sprinkler system, we do meet our diagonal distance requirement for the 2 extreme doors within the boutique at the storefront. We still have the opportunity to add 1 more door for access for deliveries on the side, where the delivery trucks could come and park at the gas station to drop off, since the owner is willing to accommodate that condition. So if that's something we could make happen, but I think we need a deed restriction on the properties, both properties, in order to make that communicating opening happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Those were my questions.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from any of my fellow commissioners? I have just a quick question. Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that delivery question. How often do you expect to receive deliveries, and Andre?
Once a day. We expect
Once a day,
once
5
a day.
days out of the week?
Yes, so we get our morning delivery. He drops off UPS and then he picks up at 4.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, seeing that none of my fellow commissioners have any other questions for the applicant, I am now going to open it up for the public hearing. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Were any comments received through email or Zoom?
Acting Chair Larios, we did receive a public comment from Daryl and Terry Mathis, but that was also submitted to you as an email to the Planning Commission, and it was received after, so I won't read that public comment. The applicant, that Mr. and Mrs. Mathis here can speak to that. There were no other public comments received. I do see Jennifer Pfaff has her hand up, so I will let her in as well.
Thank you.
May I add something, please? I know you closed the public comment. I mean,
Sorry about that. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and let the after the Jennifer speaks here, I will go ahead and close the public comment and open it up for you to talk against Suhail.
Great, thank you very much.
Do you want me to talk
Hi,
now?
Jennifer.
Hi,
Jennifer.
Mr. Larios. Hi. Okay. It's just a very brief, whoops, I disappeared. A very brief comment, similar to Commissioner Gall regarding the actually plants or something. And yes, he is correct. And I think most commissioners know that that public right of way, the El Camino right of way, probably normally would have required at least a tree in a, be prepared in a cut out. I know it's all concrete now, but normally in the olden days there were planter strips there. So I know this doesn't sound like your permanent project, and there's maybe something coming down the pike, but just simply for the record, it might be nice to just put that in, that normally there, I think, with facade changes and such, there probably would have been a tree required here. And so I just wanted to mention that for the record, that maybe later down the pike, or also when the El Camino renewal project, if that goes ahead, is done, there will be a strip here around whatever egress you have. So just FYI, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do we have any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. I'm now going to open it. Go ahead, sorry.
Larios, we did have a raised hand for a brief moment from Daryl Mathis. I don't know if, Daryl, if you would like to speak, if you can raise your hand one more time.
Okay. Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
I missed it. My apologies.
That's okay.
Mr. Mathis, hi, go ahead. Mr. Mathis, I think you're on mute.
You hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, good. I realize I submitted written comments already, but I just wanted to sort of emphasize a few things for public consideration here. Parking in this area has always been a problematic issue. People make free use of the driveway on our property to get to the parking area in the back behind. And they try to park there and, you know, just basically do whatever they want to do and hope they get away with it, despite that we have posted signs that prohibit, say that they're subject to being towed. And that area is also an easement for the some of the businesses on Broadway that need access to the back of their units. So parking is kind of a big issue for us, and that's our primary concern, the potential congestion and inappropriate usage of the property, as well as the associated potential, you know, safety issues when you have people coming in and out of that rather narrow access way, and the potential for a number of people that may be present in this proposed business. I would point out that the parking situation, I think, is a little different here than it is on other areas of the commercial strip. Most other places on Broadway, any business has parking sort of any direction you go, either on Broadway in front or parking lots back behind one side or the other. This business at the edge on El Camino really has very limited parking facilities that are obviously there, accessible, and nearby. And of course, El Camino itself has no parking at all, and it's a very busy street. So I think the parking issues there are a little more critical than they might be elsewhere within Burlingame. So I would emphasize that needs to be taken into consideration. It also seems to me that we only had a week to really consider this proposal, so it seems like it's a rather short amount of time to fully evaluate it. So perhaps some additional time for consideration would be in order. So I think that's pretty much the substance of our concern.
Thank you very much for your public comment. Do we have any other public comments? It looks like we do not. I'm gonna go ahead and close the public comment hearing and open it up back so that the applicants can speak.
Yes, you know, with all due respect to Mr. Mathis and the parking issues that occur in front of this property and along his easement for parking, we do want to respect that. That's why I think we're looking at the potential of putting some sort of outdoor planting. It might not be permanent planting, but potted or some sort of trough type planting to give some separation. We will talk to Caltrans and see what the limitations are there. So we limit any kind of automobile traffic right in front of the property or coming onto that easement. The idea is that there are businesses up and down Burlingame Avenue, and they all park on the Burlingame Strip and in the additional parking lots that are being accommodated to them by the city. And there just happens to be one right behind Chase and one a block away. And we did get letters of support. We got about 30, 31, 32 signatures of support on this project that I could present to the planning department. And that's, you know, that's over, I think, a 4-day period of time when we started soliciting letters of support for this business. So we do want to respect the neighbors. We do want to respect their needs, and we're not trying to impact parking, but we see this as it's part of the neighborhood commercial district. It is a viable commercial business, and it's not a residential location. It's a business location. And the only way we can accommodate parking is through the same means that all the other shops are accommodating parking along the strip and with the adjacent parking lots that are allocated to them. So we would like the neighbors' support, and we would like the commission's support. So I appreciate you listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I am going to go ahead and close it up to the applicant and open it up to my fellow commissioners. Do we have any comments or any motions? Commissioner Gall, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm having a tough time with this parking variance. I understand the desire to put something like a hair salon in there. But when I think of a hair salon, I also think of someone coming along to drop their mother off who wanted to go get her hair done, who is driving perhaps. And I don't see where parking in the lot over by the post office is going to be a viable option. Unfortunately, with Lyft and Uber and everything else, I've seen way too many times somebody just stop in the middle of the El Camino and park to either drop off or pick up, and with really no concern that it's a state highway. I understand the argument that, yeah, the other businesses in Burlingame also use the perimeter parking or the peripheral parking. However, they have parking spaces also right in front of their business on Broadway, which are hopefully accessible to them, and then they have a place to drop off. The delivery and pickup daily is a concern to me, especially because there would not be parking. If the curb cuts eliminated, people are not going to pull up onto the sidewalk like they do now. The beauty of what the building has been over the last 30 years that I've seen it is it's always been an automotive shop. So you pull in and you drive all the way into the building. I've had tires done there, and that's exactly what you do. You just pull in. I've used Sam Smog, and you pull in. Granted, sometimes you do park on that sidewalk there, and that's probably not a good use. But I'm not seeing the hardship here for a variance because the building has always had a tenant, as not always, but has been vacant only for short periods of time. I think that if this project moves forward, we really do need to see a landscape plan and some kind of communication with Caltrans about what's going to happen in front of the building. That's going to be really critical about how this whole thing plays out and how business is going to work there. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And the applicant mentioned the lot behind Chase is also where people park. Yes, people park there. I use Chase Bank all the time, and it's a private lot. And occasionally they send somebody out there to put notices on everyone's car that you're not supposed to be parking here. It's all the people in the apartment buildings. Well, that shows me there's kind of a shortage of parking or something's going on. But I'm just having a hard time with the variance. I don't have any problem with the business itself being in there, but I don't think that the parking issue has been resolved with this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gall. Commissioner Camarado.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Gall. I mean, I think I'd like to see what Caltrain will do. I need to see a landscaping plan. I do worry. Broadway has become really busy. I know that even down, especially by Il Piccolo and by the Chinese restaurant there on the corner, it's just packed. You can never find parking, and all the parking lots are full. So I grew up literally a block and a half away from here. So Broadway is my little place that I always go to. And I know how busy it gets in that corner. And I think what will happen is I find that people will want to go into the store and then they'll park in where the gas station is because they're just doing a quick drop off. And I think we're going to see a lot of congestion there. So I agree with Commissioner Gall.
Thank you. Commissioner Say.
Yes, thank you. So I too agree with my fellow commissioners Gall and Camarado about the concerns that they've brought up. I want to see this business succeed and have a nice space. This looks like a beautiful floor plan. It looks like a great space to shop for a prom dress, bridesmaid's dress, a wedding gown. But I'm worried about human behavior. And human behavior tells me that, that you have your little niece and grandkids or somebody coming along to see a bride getting size for her dress, and numbers of people running down the street, potentially dropping off right at the sidewalk, and or Uber drivers stopping and dropping off people and picking people up. I also can even imagine the daily UPS truck just stopping right there and make deliveries right to the door, and stopping up traffic in that area. So it's not the business that has any problems. I mean, I think the business can be very successful from my experience with the Belmont store, and I would want to see it be successful. But what comes with success is obviously a number of people wanting to go into the store. Just driving up Broadway and looking at the parking spaces. Yes, there's 2-hour parking meters, but there are also a number of limited parking, green spaces, limited 20 to 30-minute parking spaces in that immediate stretch leading to the gas station. And so there isn't a lot of even metered parking in the very nearby area, where I think people would want to focus their parking, to be close to the boutique entrance. If you are, a bride and you've just had your makeover and you want to leave the store and get to your car, it's like a big fashion show to go walk down Broadway to get to your car. You'd want to probably come right out and get into the car, protect your hair, your dress, and all of that. And so I'm just worried about just typical human behavior and what might happen to this stretch on El Camino with all the customers and visitors who may be coming to this business.
Thank you, Commissioner Say. I will also add my comment. I cannot find the required findings for a variance here. I just cannot find A, B, or C in the scenario. And I do appreciate my fellow commissioners for asking questions. It really helped me understand the business. Also appreciate the owner here. I think that this is a great business for Burlingame. However, I just cannot find the required findings for a variance in this situation. So I will leave my comment at that. With that said, do I have any motions from my fellow commissioners? Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, Ruben or Scott, maybe you can help me on this. Can we deny it at this level, or do we need to, we're only at study, right? So what are our options here? Or do we continue it and see if the applicant wants to rewrite the application and resolve some of these issues that we've brought up?
Yeah, I think there's a couple options here for you. So you can continue the item, requesting that the applications be rewritten to address your concerns. There were also some suggestions I heard regarding the landscaping and what to do in that front area to try to just go from wanting to park and enter into the site there. Or you could also put it on regular action with that same direction that they come back with that information to be provided. It doesn't look like you would put it on a consent calendar, so you probably have those two options: continue it or bring it back to regular action at the next available meeting when they have the information available.
Okay, well then I would make a motion to put it on to approve this for the action calendar, but I want to make it very clear to the applicant that as far as the 4 commissioners that are present tonight, there was no support for the variance. So I would consider that very carefully if you want to continue with this and recraft your application. But the other thing, as Ruben stated, I think that the landscape plan needs to be addressed in a very aggressive fashion, not just, well, here's what I think we would do. I for one, would want to see something, some sort of a response from Caltrans that, yes, this is what we would approve, or we would work with you on, or something, just to show that that's in motion. So I guess is that a long enough motion? The motion would be to bring it back on action.
Would have anyone second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Excellent. May we please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Acting Chair Larios.
Aye.
So the motion passes 4-0-1-2, and this action is not appealed.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to move on to agenda item number 10, Commissioner's report. Commissioners, do you have anything to share? Commissioner Torres.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to report out from the zoning ordinance update subcommittee, which consists of myself, Commissioner Larios, and Commissioner Loftus. We met June 9th, had 3 items on our agenda: community benefits, streetscape design, and objective design standards. In regards to the first item, community benefits, we looked at the list of community benefits that have been identified thus far. If you recall, this is in regards to developments that can take advantage of possible density bonuses and other considerations. If they use the tiered process, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, for various community benefits that they might provide as part of their project. We looked at the list of those. We generally felt that that was a good list, but we did ask if staff could make a pass at maybe prioritizing the list to try to get to the point of some greater community benefits rather than just the simple, well, not simple, but the typical benefit that we've been seeing, meaning just a larger than required public plaza. Trying to bring some incentive or some way to bring some of the other items on the list up to a higher level in terms of priority. We also asked if staff could maybe, if there's some way to reach out to other commissions in the city to see if there are other projects or other things that might be included. For example, the Teaspoon, the Traffic Safety Committee, if they had things, work projects on their list or goals that might be included then on a list of possible community benefit that a project can either become a part of, contribute to, or incorporate into their project. Then in regards to the streetscape designs, we looked at some sample streetscape profiles that Public Works is considering in working with a landscape design consultant, Calendar Associates, over for Old Bayshore Highway. And so there were some good examples, allowed us to generate some thoughts as to what things that we thought were items that could and should be included in a good streetscape design. Some things like tree canopies, general landscaping, pedestrian-friendly streets, with such things as bulb outs at corners to make pedestrian crossings safer and more friendly, median strips with landscaping, road diets where possible, so things such as that. So based on those examples that we saw for Old Bayshore Highway, we expressed some preferences for some of the details that we were seeing there. On the third item, objective design standards, this gets to the requirement that is coming from the state through various pieces of legislation that require that cities allow for faster and simpler processing via objective standards, primarily for multifamily housing projects, where if something can be shown to meet the objective standards as a city, then those projects are required to move forward. And so we discussed various things. For one item being, a general question of where we, Burlingame, are at relative to our housing goals, regional housing goals that have been identified. The good news is that we're not one of the poster child, I would say, candidates for sort of communities acting badly and not trying to meet their goals. We are doing a fairly good job of trying to approve and process projects, particularly projects wherever we can with affordable units. But nonetheless, we all agreed that we probably do need to find some way to come to land on some more objective standards. We discussed some simple methods for doing that. For example, we suggested that maybe staff could visit our current design guidelines and find ways to turn those into design standards, meaning just maybe a simple revisiting of the design guidelines and identifying all the locations where they're permissive with such language as, should, and changing those to shall. just making a first pass to see where that gets us, because that might offer a fairly quick and easy way to get to some standards that bring us to the realm of more objectivity. We also discussed the possibility of form-based coding and seeing if those might offer some help in achieving what we desire with our design guidelines via some more objective standards, just in terms of building form and character, things like that, and setting those as standards that developers, applicants can latch on to and have more assurance or more certainty in terms of their processing. So those are some of the things that we discussed. Staff, it sounds like, has a few things that they're going to work on and bring back to us as a subcommittee, if not as a commission as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taranis. That was a great report. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Let's go ahead. Do we have any other reports from my fellow commissioners? I don't see any. Let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 11, director's reports. Kevin, Ruben, do you have any information to share?
Sure, yeah. So there are a couple FYIs. I'll get to those in a second, but at the June 7th City Council meeting, the City Council reviewed an introduction of the ordinance amendment to allow health service uses on the ground floor in the HMU district. And at that meeting, the council expressed many of the concerns that you had all expressed in Planning Commission's review, and decided not to move forward with adoption of the ordinance. So it was not introduced. It pretty much then ended at that point, and there's no further consideration of the actual proposed use that was looking to go into that site at 220 Primrose Road. I don't know, Assistant City Attorney Spansale, I believe you were at the meeting. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, but that was kind of the general summary.
No, planning manager here and got pretty much everything. The City Council agreed with most of your findings that you had at the meeting, and we felt that the issues couldn't be resolved with the conditional use permit, so they just ended up not bringing forward the ordinance.
And let's see, the FYI items, we have 3 on tonight. I would note that they are all coming back to you based on requested changes that the commission had. They're not necessarily changes to projects that the applicant is proposing or has made, but these are just in response to conditions of approval that you had requesting that additional changes be made to these projects. They are at 1548 Balboa Avenue, 728 Lexington Way, and 1431 Cappuccino Avenue. If any of you have concerns about these projects, please let me know, and we can bring it forward to you for action, or if I can try to answer any questions you may have.
Ruben, I have a question. 1548 Balboa. We have a list of changes, but are those the only things we're limited to discussing? Because I noted some other changes that would cause me to have this pulled.
And I'm not too familiar with that one, but are these some changes that were in addition to the ones that the commission had requested?
That's correct.
Okay, so yes, I think if you see additional changes.
Yeah, so the concerns that I have over the ones that were spelled out in the letter were the skylights. There's one skylight right at the front over the front porch. That's one of those plastic sun tunnels. It's not on the plan. It's not on the approved plan or the proposed plan. The other is the exterior lighting. It doesn't show up on, some of it shows up on the as-built plan, but the specific lighting that I'm concerned about is on the left-hand side as it shines into the neighbor's property, and it doesn't show on either elevation. And then the other one is more of a building issue, but I think it bears discussion with us, and that's the termination of it's going to be either the water heater or the furnace, which is in the attic. The pipes look like they fell out of the sky the way they're sticking out of the roof. And I know that what we're supposed to do is try to terminate all those vent pipes towards the rear of the building where they won't be visible from the street. But those were my main 3 concerns.
Okay, so we can bring that back.
Thank you.
Meeting with, and we'll make sure the applicant is aware of those concerns. Any others? Are the others okay? 728 Lexington and 1431 Cappuccino. Looks like there are no concerns. Those can move forward. Great. Okay. I think that's all. We do have a study session scheduled for the June 28th meeting. At this point, we're not quite sure of what topics we'll include, but I believe that is our last scheduled study session for this run of a couple meetings where we're meeting at 6 o'clock. But thank you all for your time. Again, that extra hour. And
quick question, Ruben, sorry to interrupt. For the June 28th study session, will that be on Zoom or do you think we'll be in person?
No, I think they'll still continue to be on Zoom.
Okay.
I know that the city is currently looking at, I know other cities have done this, but we're trying to figure out a way to do a hybrid meeting where we can meet in person, but also allow the public and or applicants to attend via Zoom as well. We're finding that we're getting more participation by doing so. So our team is looking at trying to figure out how to implement that in person or City Hall opening. We don't know the date yet, and we don't know in what form or fashion that'll be. Or we'll certainly report to you as soon as we have some news. But June 28th will definitely still be on Zoom.
And
okay.
On that
Thank you
note,
so much.
Commissioner Larios, the governor's executive order suspending the in-person Brown Act requirement is going till at least September 30th as it's currently written. So that doesn't mean necessarily that we will be doing those meetings, but that we are allowed to without violating any rules or regulations until that time.
Thank you for the clarification. All right, I guess if we don't have anything else, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting adjourned at 8:24 p.m. This was great. Thank you all for your patience, for having me as acting chair tonight. So I appreciate you all.
Excellent job.
Good job.
Great job, Ray. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
for stepping in.
everyone. Good
Night,
night.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.